everybody, this is your friendly neighborhood bohemian, Shane Wilder, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about comic book movies. I've noticed in the comment boards to The Dark Knight, there's been a small trend of people saying that Heath Ledger should not be given an Oscar nomination because it's a comic book movie, and to them comic book movies are insubstantial, they serve no purpose to an adult world, and they are dumbing down people. They go on to say things like comic book movies are all about superheroes and cartoon characters. Well, they're not all about superheroes and cartoon characters. Yes, superheroes are important, but a superhero serves a purpose. It is to show the best of ourselves. For example, Captain America promotes patriotism. Superman, truth, justice, and the American way. Even the X-Men had a purpose. They were created in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. They were made to represent what the African American population was going through. Now, let's get out of this superhero spiel. Because, yes, there are a lot of superhero movies. Let's get into comic books as a whole. Are they all about superheroes and cartoon characters? No. In fact, many of the movies you have seen are based over comic books. And you may not have known that. Let me tell you what I'm talking about and show you a few comic books that you may have not known were also movies that you enjoyed. Let's start with The Crow by J. O'Barr. Yes, the infamous Crow starring Brandon Lee is based over a comic book. So were all of the sequels. Another movie that had great reviews that you may not have known was a comic book is Alan Moore's V for Vendetta. And it's a pretty substantial piece of literature, but it is a comic book. Now, it doesn't all have to deal with vigilantes or things like that. Some comic books are just downright horrific. In fact, if you happen to see 30 Days of Night, 30 Days of Night is a comic book. They're not things you would normally think of as being a comic book. Just like two other overly fantastic stories that made wonderful movies, but most people did not realize they were comic books. I'm talking about two works by Frank Miller. 300, yes, the story of the 300 Spartans is a comic book. And Sin City. Okay, you want down to earth. Let's see. Something that was rated with an A on Yahoo for the critics' reviews when it came out, that is based over a comic book, would have to be, I don't know, A History of Violence. Yes, A History of Violence is a comic book. Pretty good one, in fact. Another comic book that was turned into a movie that is pretty down to earth is Road to Perdition. So, here's what I'm trying to get forward. Are comic books really insubstantial, or are they just a different form of telling a story, such as a movie is a different form of telling a story? To me, a comic book is just as substantial as this. It's like saying that, well, Stephen King is insubstantial to anything else because all he writes is horror. Not true. Stephen King wrote The Shawshank Redemption, and he's written other non-horror novels and short stories. To pigeonhole something like this is inappropriate. It may have pictures, but it's still a literary art form. I leave you with that. I welcome your opinions. Until next time, good night and good luck.